Acts chapter 14. And it came to pass in Iconium, that they went both together, that's Paul and Barnabas, into the synagogue of the Jews, and so spake, that a great crowd both of Jews and also of the Gentile Greeks believed. But the unbelieving Jews were troublemakers, and stirred up the Gentiles, and made their minds evil affected against Paul and Barnabas. A long time therefore abode they, speaking boldly in the Lord, which gave testimony unto the word of his grace, and granted signs and wonders to be done by their hands. So they were performing miracles with the power of God in them. But the crowd, the multitude of the city, was divided. The population was split, and part held with the Jews and part with the apostles. And when there was an attack made by the Gentiles and also of the Jews with their rulers to use them despitefully and to stone them, Paul and Barnabas were aware that the assault was coming, and fled into Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and unto the region that lay around there, that lieth round about. And there they preached the gospel. So they were run out of town. And there sat a certain man at Lystra, impotent in his feet, being a cripple from his mother's womb, and he had never walked. This crippled man heard Paul speak, and Paul, steadfastly beholding him, and perceiving that the crippled man had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, Stand upright on thy feet. And he leaped and walked. And when the people saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in the speech of Lycaonia, The gods are come, which is a Greek area, the gods are come down to us in the likeness of men. And they called Barnabas Jupiter, and Paul Mercury, because he was the chief speaker. So they thought that Paul and Barnabas were their Greek gods. Then the priest of Jupiter, which was before their city, brought oxen and garlands of flowers. You know, garlands like they put on racehorses when they win. Those rings of flowers around their neck, unto the gates, and would have made sacrifice with the people. Which when the apostles, Barnabas and Paul, heard of this, that they were going to make sacrifices unto Jupiter and Mercury, who they thought they were, when Barnabas and Paul heard this, they tore their clothes and ran in among the people, crying out and saying, Sirs, why are you doing this? We are men just like you, and preach unto you that you should turn away from these vanities, these statues of gods, unto the living God, who made heaven and earth and the sea and all the things that are in therein, who in times past suffered all nations to walk in their own ways. Meaning God has been tolerating, putting up with the nation of man, thinking that they were so wonderful. Nevertheless, God left not himself without witness, in that he did good, and gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness, even though we didn't deserve it. And with these sayings scarce restrained they the people, that they had not done sacrifice unto them. And there came thither certain Jews from Antioch and Iconium, who persuaded the people, and having stoned Paul, threw him out of the city, his unconscious, lifeless body, supposing he was dead. Howbeit, as the disciples stood around Paul, he rose up and came into the city, and the next day he left with Barnabas to Derbe. So they stoned Paul, leaving him for dead, but he wasn't dead. And when Paul and Barnabas had preached the gospel to that city, in Derbe, and had taught many, they returned again to Lystra and to Iconium and to Antioch, confirming the souls of the disciples there, and exhorting them to continue in the faith, and that we must through much tribulation enter into the kingdom of God. And when they had ordained them elders in every church, and had prayed with fasting, they commended them to the Lord, on whom they believed. And after they had passed through Pisidia, they came to Pamphylia, and when they preached the word in Perga, they went down to Attalia, and thence sailed they to Antioch, from whence they had been recommended to the grace of God for the work which they fulfilled. And when they got there, they gathered the church together, and they reviewed and rehearsed all that God had done with them, and how he had opened the door of faith among the Greeks. And there they abode a long time with the other disciples.